Alright, what is up everybody? So today we're starting off our push to Arceus here. We're just kind of doing this. I did put out a poll a little while ago asking which deck I should use, and you guys all voted that I play a control deck all the way up. This Milotic, well, not control, wall deck, Milotic wall. So that's what we're playing today. So let's just get right into it. We open up a Cornerstone Ogerpon and an Arceus V. My opponent does look like some kind of Miraidon deck with the Arceus in there just as an extra tech card. So just skimming through this, we go Arven here, checking our prize cards a little bit. I'm trying to determine which is the best for this, because this is going to be a learning process for me as well. I'm not super familiar with these control-esque decks. It looks like we go for the Buddy-Buddy Poffin, and we grab 2 Mimikyus, throw a Mist Energy onto our Cornerstone, and then just pass it on over to my opponent here. Does rip off a generator, hits 1, puts it on their Raikou, and then attaches to their Arceus and goes ahead and attacks. Now coming back, we do draw into a Penny here. We're going to attach the Psychic and attach the Psychic to our Cornerstone, which at this point we're not too worried about. We're just going to boss up that Miraidon, try and stall them a little bit. Right now we're recognizing that the only things they have that can attack are that Regidrago V and that Arceus, and then obviously Raichu is, not Raichu, Raichu is known in these Miraidon decks, so that is another attacking option for them. Now my opponent is just moving things along on their end of the board. Here comes an Iono. We see Feebas, Pokégear, Ultra Ball, Artazon, Mist Energy, and Fighting. That Fighting is going to be really nice, so we can actually attack with our Cornerstone here. Now, my opponent has plenty of energy in play in order to go ahead and get the knockout with their Raichu here. So we just say, oh well, we're going to go into Mimikyu. My opponent has locked themselves and is completely unable to knock out our Mimikyus at any point. So worst comes to worst, we just end up decking them out. We're going to boss up that Miraidon just to stall them a little bit. Go and retreat. We're going to discard the Mist Energy. The thought process there is if we get Penny, then we can get the Psychic Energy back from our Cornerstone. But our opponent just goes ahead and bosses up the Cornerstone back, and then they pass it right back because they don't have a way to get that Miraidon out of the active. So we do Vessel away another Ogerpon so we can go and get our hands on a Mimikyu there. And we get the Turbo Energize, and we put that 1 water on the Mimikyu. Now here, I did grab 2 Psychic off of that Earthen Vessel, which was a misplay. I would have preferred grabbing something else, if anything at all. That way, the Turbo Energize would have been able to put energy on that Mimikyu. But it doesn't make much of a difference. We just go ahead and Ghost Die. My opponent did get knockout on that Cornerstone, and there is nothing that my opponent can do here. They're going to retreat into Arceus, hoping that Arceus V Star is different than V, but it is the same, so my opponent recognizes they're walled off and goes ahead and gives us the win. Hopping into our second game of ladder here. Now, preferably our deck is going to be going second. That's just because not only does it give us that turn of potentially Buddy-Buddy Poffins and whatnot to hopefully see what the matchup is, but also it's going to let us use TM Evo or TM Turbo Energize to hopefully start attacking right away. Now, we don't particularly have a good starting Pokemon here. We would prefer either the Mimikyu or the Cornerstone just to have something established right away. But we go ahead and put that Girafarig in the active spot and find out that it is going to be a mirror. So we see my opponent's Feebas. We see the Fighting Energy. So we know that it is a mirror match. Thankfully, we did get Artazon from our opponent. Now, I'm not really sure how to play the mirror. Like I said, I am new to this deck. After recording the battles in this video, I'm finding out that Cornerstone, which, I mean, should be obvious, but Cornerstone is the way to go because it is our biggest hitter. Mimikyu is blocked by Mist Energy. Just many things that kind of add up. So Cornerstone is the go-to in the mirror for those who are wondering how to play that. We go ahead Buddy-Buddy Poffin here, partially just to thin, also to look at our deck a little bit. And we're going to go ahead and grab ourselves that Cornerstone, recognizing, hey, we got to use this as our Pokemon. And we get the Turbo Energize, but unfortunately we do not have an energy to start using that Turbo Energize for our Cornerstone. So my opponent's having some pretty solid turns on their end. They are going to go ahead. They have their Milotic online, that Hypno Splash, and they bench and start powering up their own Cornerstone Ogerpon. Here, I think I was responding to someone in chat. I did start streaming, by the way, so this was kind of the first stream of my streaming career, let's say, and I did go ahead. Sorry, I was trying to keep up. We are just going to go for a Turbo Energize here, smack the cape on our Cornerstone. And so now that Cornerstone is nice and charged up. But over on Twitch, I am going to be streaming a majority of these battles, and then taking this content and doing this sort of thing where I voice it over for the video, and my opponent does go ahead and they hit us with the Hypno Splash, which does not knock us out because of Mimikyu's ability, but it does put us to sleep as the side effect because we don't have a Mist Energy on there. Now, I just play this TM Evo just so we get it out of our hand in case we get Iono'd. It won't be cluttering up our deck later on. And here I'm like double checking, triple checking. I actually forgot that sleep makes it so you can't retreat as well. So definitely a mistake on my part. But that's just how it is sometimes. You know, sleep, I haven't seen it in so long. My opponent does get to boss up our Cornerstone, getting that first hit now. The cape is going to kind of save us here a little bit. Not a ton, but just let us tank an extra hit from the opposing Cornerstone. And I kind of noted that the Demolish says 0 damage because of the opposing Cornerstone's ability. But quite frankly, since Demolish does say prevent all... or this attack is not affected by any effects on your opponent's active, it just goes through and hits ahead. Now, we did see there my opponent did Pokévial A as their A-spec. So we're just going to boss up their other Ogerpon here, benching our own. I did want to Turbo Energize onto our other Ogerpon, but unfortunately we do have that Hero's Cape on there, so we're unable to. So we're going to go ahead and use that Mimikyu, discovering there's only 1 energy left in deck, which is not ideal. We're going to go ahead and stick it onto that other Cornerstone, really looking to kind of stall our opponent here for a little while until we can get access to those resources, and just placing damage counters with Ghost Eye until we get there, because we need to find a I believe a Super Rod is going to be the go-to recovery here. So we do promote the healthier of the 2 Cornerstones, find ourselves in Arven. Now I absolutely could have Arven here. We grabbed the Pokégear because instead of grabbing Super Rod for energy, I'm going to look to grab a Penny so we can heal ourselves and as well as get that energy back and that cape back. So I want to try and hit a Penny off this Pokégear is the go-to. We top deck another Pokégear. Not seeing any pennies, unfortunately. We try again and still miss out on them, which does suck. So I go and check. I'm like, is it even in there? And yes, there is a penny. And we just Ripper research and we do find it here. Hovered over the concede button there. We're going to attach the Mist Energy to our Cornerstone on the bench here. Pass it over to our opponent, who Iono's that penny away that we did just find. So quite annoying. My opponent is going to take the knockout here. Going to Nest Ball. Just grab the Girafarig. There's not much going on. We wanted to thin so we can get better chances of finding Penny. So we do go ahead and we Penny that up. Drop the cape back on it. We have all that fresh energy in our hand, thankfully. That is why I prefer the cape over the Pokévial, is because the Pokévial is you use it once and that's it. Versus this cape can be reused. So my opponent does get down to 1 prize card, which good for them. But we're just going to attach here. We're going to use Boss to stall for another turn. And then we're going to be able to attach and start attacking here. So we go ahead and just demolish onto the active Milotic. Here I'm kind of explaining the different abilities to one of the people in chat. That's what the hovering was about. We do get hit with an Iono. My opponent is down to 1 prize card, so we go ahead and we get to rip a Super Rod, getting some energy back, and a Cornerstone, which after the fact I go for a Nest Ball, and I decide it's actually not going to be best to play that because that is just effectively 100 less health that I would have had attacking. And we decide not to attack here because then my opponent would have gotten first hit, if that makes sense, onto the Cornerstones. so I didn't actually want to take out the Milotic there. My opponent recognizes, hey, I'm not going to be able to get through this Cornerstone before they get through mine. They might have been one energy short, so we do take the win there and hop into our third game here. We do, again, elect to go second and give up a mulligan here. Just waiting a little bit. We did give up 2 mulligans, it looks like. Drop in a Mimikyu. Obviously, that is one of the ideal starts. We see Rotom when we see Pidgey. So first thought here was Charizard. We're going to bench the Feebas figuring, oh, hey, it's just Charizard. So definitely going through. We get the TM Evo and the Nest Ball. We figure we have energy. So really solid turn 1 here. Getting those 2 Milotics going. So really, really nice for that matchup. My opponent does go Buddy-Buddy Poffin. And yes, it is going to be Charizard here. So they're just kind of going through their turn. We see the Dusclopses here, or the Duskulls, but we are not too concerned because, again, our opponent does have to give up a prize card every single time they use one of those, and it's really not the end of the world when it comes down to it. So here we go for a Nest Ball, just trying to thin a little bit. We figure the Charizard matchup, we're still fine. We can get these Ogerpons down, and you'll see in a little bit why that comes back to bite me. But for now, we do just attach it and go for a Ghost Dye and start establishing some damage. So far, everything seems pretty normal on their end. They get a Dusclops out on the board. They get that Charizard out. And then they are going to Infernal Rain 3 onto their Charmander, which that should have been a telltale sign for me, but it wasn't. You'll see in a second what I'm talking about. We're going to attach to the Milotic. Go ahead and Crispin to get some energy accelerated here. Taking a look at our what could be prized. Going to attach the Psychic there. And just go ahead, Ghost Dye for another 70 damage. I think this is the turn that it all goes wrong. Yep, there's the Ultra Ball, the attachment, and out comes the Brave Wing Charizard, which does not have an ability, nor is it Terra typing. So I completely forgot this was in the game. My opponent does Turo up their Rotom. They pop the Duskull to damage my Milotic, and they're gonna go ahead and get that big 330 damage attack off. I can't quite tell what it is named, but yeah, just really hurting us. So here we go. Oh no, this is not good. My opponent is in a very nice spot. They're gonna be able to just kind of prize chase us because unfortunately we overbenched, assuming that it was just a regular Charizard deck. So here my thought process is, okay, I need to find pennies to get these cornerstones off of my bench. That way my opponent is not going to have enough prize cards available to them. But as you'll see, I don't believe we're able to get the job done. Just the incredible power of that Pidgeot Quick Search, finding whatever. My opponent does go ahead, pop a Dusclops, and then do Brave Wing 160. So doing that Ghost Dye was actually another misplay because that Brave Wing does deal 100 more damage just because it has damage on it. So we do go ahead and we get to Turo up, or not Turo, Penny up one of our cornerstones, but that Milotic is still sitting there. And at this point, I think that I'm fine because, quite frankly, I totally forget that Penny only targets basics. So my opponent does get to Boss's Orders this Milotic, and they just smack it. So only 60 health left on it. We're thinking we're fine. I go through. I want to start thinning out my deck. So we don't grab anything, but we find the Penny, and here's where I realize, oh my gosh, this is not a basic Pokemon. So I do go ahead and concede just to save those couple of seconds there as I'm trying to get through this. Obviously, pushing ladder with control decks was not on my bucket list, but here I am. My opponent did win the coin flip in this battle, so that was really a good demonstration of what not to do with these decks, that you're supposed to limit, basically not allow your opponent to take 6 prize cards in one way or another, just by overbenching and putting those prize cards in play, basically. So if I hadn't overbenched like that, then we would have been fine with those Mimikyus, because we would have been able to outpace our opponent, basically. But that was not the case because they can only Dusclops so often, especially if we put a cape on one of them. Anyway, we're playing along here. We recognize that my opponent is playing I think we've seen it's already Regidrago at this point. Yep, here comes the first Regidrago. They already have some dragons in the discard pile, and obviously I was saying the whole time going through this is that I don't think my opponent knows like really how Regidrago works, and the fact that it is still a Pokemon that has an ability, um, and such. So my opponent is just going to play it out as if it's a regular game, not against a wall deck here. Um, there I was talking about the Alolan Executor, how I want to get those mist energies in play. Otherwise, my opponent will be able to take knockouts. So really emphasizing the necessity of mist energy, especially in this particular matchup with that Swinging Sphene being able to just blatantly knock out a basic Pokemon unless it is protected from those secondary effects. So right now, the only thing that can knock out my Pokemon is that Radiant Charizard going for Mimikyu, which obviously my opponent is not even trying to do. They're just energy switching onto their Regidrago, as if they would usually, just cutting through their deck with these researches and stuff. Only 12 cards left for my opponent, and after benching those Pokemon, now they could get attacks with Mew, but that's going to require a lot of attaching and a lot of energy switching that Regidrago is really not equipped for once you're this deep into the game. So I don't think my opponent really knew how to go against these wall decks. Otherwise, that would have been their first look instead of getting rid of their Radiant Charizard effectively and not getting that Mew online. They do promote the Mew, which is correct. You would want to promote whatever has free retreat. That way you can pick and choose. They go for the Prime Catcher into Regidrago. And here, I believe my opponent was thinking, oh, Giratina does not have an ability, and I'm copying Giratina, so I must still be able to get the attack off, right? And unfortunately, that is not the case, as the Pokemon that does the attacking has an ability, and you're just copying that attack. So my opponent is playing through their turn. They did Prime Catcher up our Cornerstone here, and we take a look at what their attacking options are, which right now a Swinging Sphene flipping heads would knock out our Cornerstone, but they go instead and try and use Giratina, which does get protected. And we know that they tried to use Giratina because it says opponent is moving attached cards, which is sending those energy to the Lost Zone. I assumed this delay, I just assumed that it was my opponent wondering, why is their Cornerstone still alive? So they did not actually discard energy, so now I'm not sure which attack that they used. Looking back, I thought that was what was going on. So my opponent does go to deck out, but they play a Super Rod, so just trying to buy turns, but it is useless at this point. Here my opponent is picking an action to use. I think they tried to Goodra this last turn maybe. And there they tried to Swinging Sphene, but we have Mist Energy in play, so nothing happens. We go ahead and we just start ghost eyeing. We do give our opponent a thumbs down because they're just kind of wasting our own time here. And obviously we're not going to concede. We're trying to climb ladder here. So my opponent just really trying to waste time is what I assumed was going on. They know they had no chance of winning at this point. They had to have known. So again, they go for a Swinging Sphene. Mist energies don't allow them to do anything. There my opponent decks out and can't attack. So we are just going to go ahead and Ghost Eye, not only for the knockout, but also for the deck out. Technically would have been faster to just hit end turn, because then we wouldn't have had to wait for our opponent to promote a Pokemon, but same result at the end of the day. So hopping into, I've lost track, what is this, our fourth game? Maybe fifth game? We do elect to go second and start a Cornerstone Ogerpon here. My opponent mulligans, we see the Pidgeotto there. I do believe, yeah, we see Pidgeotto and we see Gift Energy, so I was a little confused. We did assume it was Charizard off the Pidgeotto, but he kind of saw me double checking the mulligan there. I wasn't sure. And so we see the Charmander and think that we're right, but then we also see Giratina V come down, as well as Cramorant, and then they have Arceus V in the active, so This is some kind of Lost Zone Charizard deck that they have cooked up. Now here I'm kind of bouncing back and forth saying, okay, Giratina can attack our Cornerstone, but only Giratina. And everything else the Mimikyu is fine from except for Cramorant. So I wasn't really sure. I wanted to establish both. Now you really do in Lost Zone want to get your mist energies down in case they play Sableye, but that's not really a threat until later in the game. And this being a post-rotation list, you're not even too concerned about that going on. So obviously our opponents have not rotated yet, but we're fine. We're just going to smack a mist energy here on our Cornerstone Ogerpon and hit him with an Iono and pass. So my opponent does start evolving. Now I see the Pokemon Go Charmander, which makes me think they have the Pokemon Go Charizard that doubles the effectiveness of the fire energy, like one counts as two. But then we see the Sparkling Crystal and the Ultra Ball for that normal, well, quote unquote normal Charizard that you would normally see. And I just go, okay, yeah, this is regular Charizard just playing the Pokemon Go Charmander for whatever reason. So we do boss up that Charizard, at the time Charmeleon, because we have no problem. Not only would it be stall until my opponent has to evolve, but also they're not going to be able to attack, and it's going to be a pretty costly retreat for my opponent. And they just go ahead and Burning Darkness for 0 damage because of our Cornerstone. Go ahead, grab Earthen Vessel so we can get some more energy in play. We grab that Hero's Cape. Yeah, I mean, it's a pretty straightforward game, I believe, here on out. We smack the Cape on the Cornerstone. That's going to put it outside of range for the 280 damage from Giratina. And because we have the Mist energy, Giratina's V-Star power can't knock it out. So at this point, I'm pretty comfortable. My opponent would have to get 2 attacks with Giratina V-Star off. And so we're just going to boss that up and start dealing damage to it before my opponent can even establish it. So really, really comfortable here. The game is pretty much over at this point. I think my opponent is here trying to figure out some way out, is what I assume. But they do nothing. We go ahead and attack, take our prize cards, and then we're waiting and waiting and waiting for our opponent to choose a new active Pokemon. So in a second here, yep, we go and check the log and it says didn't take action in time twice, which does tell me that our opponent did just close the game. They saw that they can't deal any damage and quit. So did pull a rage quit with the with the wall deck this low, this early in ladder. Now, unfortunately, for some reason, the recording is like cut off at the top here, so we can't see how many cards are in my opponent's hand. We do lose the coin flip and have to go first, which isn't the end of the world. I didn't even get to see what that mulligan was. It is going to be a Venomoth deck, kind of like the one that I posted on the channel. Actually, I don't recall. This might be the same in terms of like card counts and such. So we do go ahead, we attach a Mist to the Mimikyu, so we're no longer able to be confused, and we go ahead and we bench ourselves a Feebas here, figuring that we're just going to want to deal damage, thinking, oh yeah, 160 is a pretty good number, we'll get that going, when in reality, I should have been going for the Girafarig, just because it also deals 30 to the bench, as we'll see here in a little bit. So just kind of playing through our turn. Here is when I realized that Farigiraf is the better of the 2 Pokemon in this kind of case where my opponent has a lot of small, fluffy Pokemon. So we do go ahead and bench a Girafarig right there. And we get the Ghost Eye 4 knockout on their Venomoth. So it is one more turn that they can't use Venomoth. But my opponent does just go into Budu. And they get a full line of Snow Runts. And pass it on over with that Itchy Pollen active, which is okay. We just have the 1 Nest Ball in our hand. It just means that we're not going to be able to use whatever we find off the Arven. So we grab ourselves a Pokégear for the next turn, and then we put a Cape on our Mimikyu to save it for a little while here, figuring that those snow Frostlasses, are going to be coming down soon, and here they come all in a storm. Frostlass, My opponent attaches a Luminous Energy for turn, and down comes that third Frostlass. So taking a lot of damage in between turns here, but so is their Monkey Dory that's slowly going to pile up. We do draw into an Iono. We're going to attach to our Girafarig on the bench here, and we are under item lock because of that Perplexing Powder, but we're not confused because of the Mist Energy. Here I wanted to TM Evo, but I did put the cape on there, and I completely forgot about it. So we just Ghost Eye and chip into this Venomoth here. Now my opponent does go for the Perplexing Powder again, which does get knockout on our Mimikyu after all those Frostlasses trigger, but I'm okay with this because we get the Girafarig pushed to the active, and I figured we would hit one off of the research, but I did wish we could have hit an energy, and we didn't, so I do actually just decide to go for the dual headbutt here, figuring my opponent is not going to be able to get knockout on this Girafarig, so we're going to get knockout on their Buddy, or their Venomoth. And now we have Girafarig EX in hand, we have Crispin in hand, we only have 2 prize cards left. My opponent goes ahead and benches that Buddy, which is the perfect HP for us to snipe down. It is also fair to mention that my opponent did forget to use their Monkey Dory that previous turn, meaning that the Frostlasses took it down, so quite a large misplay on my opponent. Now here that recording did go back up to normal, hopping into another game here. Opponent did win the coin flip and gets to choose, and they decide to go first, which we are more than happy with. Now, my opponent must have not liked their starting hand. It was an Aegislash deck, as we see at the end there, but just an immediate concession, so must have either not meant to get into a match there or whatever, but they just immediately concede, and I'm kind of happy because Aegislash decks are a nightmare for us to deal with, as we do have to use our Cornerstone, which does hit just for 10 shy of knockout. Now, flipping over, we see Noibat, and so we can tell it's another control deck. Because that Noivern is going to want to make it so our basic Pokemon can't deal damage to it. And my opponent Artisans to find themselves a Mimikyu and passes it on over. So instead of going for the TM Evolution, we go for a TM Turbo Energize that we did already have in our hand. Just kind of forgot about it. We go ahead and Artisan for a Girafarig here. And we're just going to attach and get some energy in play here. We're going to start charging up our own Farigiraf. Again, because I kind of, for whatever reason, thought Girafarig would be the better go-to for a mirror matchup like that. But as I've stated, Cornerstone is the way to go for these control mirrors. Because Milotic can't hit into these wall Pokemon. Girafarig cannot hit into these wall Pokemon. Here I'm kind of realizing it and saying, oh well, I want to get some damage going. So we are going to penny up that other one in the active spot and just do some damage. Now, that 30 damage was irrelevant. It wasn't going to deal damage to either of them. So just throw it on the Cornerstone. And then we do have to take a hit. And here I'm trying to figure out a plan of attack. That timer does set in. We do just stick an energy on our Mimikyu. We go ahead and get a Nest Ball for our own Cornerstone. We double up on them. And we're just going to go for the Turbo Energize. We're not going to try and attack for 0 damage. We put 1 energy on our Mimikyu, not really realizing, hey, this deck is running out of energy fast. You're going to need to find a Super Rod in order to keep things going. So just sticking it on that Mimikyu might have been not for the best. We do find a Boss's Orders off this Pokégear that we top decked, but it looks like we decide to go for the Arven instead. That way we can get Super Rod for that energy back in the deck, and we get Hero's Cape so we can tank and attack from that Cornerstone, but I forgot about the Mist Energy, and I had committed to the Mimikyu at that point, so I just go, oh well, we're going to call it there, and just get into our next match right away. So, slowly but surely learning what to do in certain scenarios, and as I've said many times throughout this video already, Cornerstone is going to be the way to go for mirror matches. Not trying to dink around with any of the other cards, and just getting right after it right away is very important. Here my opponent does flip over a Dreepy, and we see, okay, Dragapult. This is a really nice matchup for it, because not only does our Milotic wall it off, but so does our Mimikyu. So we do just get the Turbo Energize, ideally, or the TM Evolution. Ideally, it would have been on both of the Feebasses, but we had to use one in the active. And my opponent does go ahead and have that precious trolley. They must have top decked it because they didn't play it during their first turn, and they just load their board with their own Mimikyus as well as a Dragapult and a Toedscruel. So that I was kind of interested at, but thankfully we do not play things like Night Stretcher or Lana's Aid, so we're more than fine with that Toedscruel taking up spot, but we are just going to boss it to stall because while it does have one retreat, its evolution has 2 retreat, and everything else has 1 retreat at this point, so we're just going to bring that up instead, just kind of slow our opponent down hopefully here. They do get some Dracloaks established, so they're going to get to see a lot of cards on their end. They're just going to attach retreat into the Dragapult, which does not deal any damage to our Milotic. Now, this last turn we could have put the Mist Energy onto our Mimikyu, but we decided not to, figuring why should we try and protect this Mimikyu when our Milotic is going to be able to tank through the entirety of the game, and it will be protected from Mimikyu placing damage counters on it with that Mist. So we're just going to put it on the Milotic here. My opponent tries to use a Devo play, but because of that Mist Energy, again, we are perfectly fine with them doing that because we're not affected. So another very important thing to point out is Devo does not work with Mist Energy. So we're just going to boss up their Toedscruel, which, like I stated, does have 2 retreat costs, and we get hit with an Iono, which is perfectly fine because now we have the energy. We could have gone for the Earthen Vessel to attach a basic energy. We decided not to because my opponent is playing Dragapult with Mimikyus and Toedscruel, so I wasn't really sure what to expect, and I didn't need some random Crushing Hammer or Enhanced Hammer coming out and getting rid of that Mist Energy on me. So we'll just go ahead and attach the other one. And my opponent just goes in for a Phantom Dive that does not work. And now, at this point, we can just Hypno Splash our way through the game. My opponent does stay asleep, which, while not making much of a difference, is just kind of amusing. If nothing else, it prevents them from attacking me with Dracloak and getting more damage in that way. So, just kind of an annoying little bit, but they do have the switch, so they're going to get 70 damage here regardless. But we top that Cape and we throw it on that Milotic to just crush our opponent's dreams of being able to chip away. Opponent does promote a Mimikyu here, which again, that's fine. Throwing a Charm on there doesn't change anything. We find a boss's orders bringing up that last Dracloak, making it so my opponent really cannot deal any damage to this Milotic. At this point, I see, hey, my opponent has 20 cards left in their deck. I have 28. So even if they just leave a Mimikyu in the active here, they can't deal any damage to me. The only thing I can deal damage to is their Dragapult. So at this point, I'm just going to end up winning by deck out. Now, there I pointed out that there was electric energy that I saw in the discard pile that they played earlier. So that makes me think, okay, this might be Iron Thorn's Dragapult. In which case, we're not just safe with just the Milotics. There was a Nest Ball looking for a Cornerstone, and for a second I thought I prized them all, and then I realized that they had just been sitting in my hand because I was in a position where it didn't really matter what was in my hand. So because of the threat of that of Iron Thorns, I do go ahead and bench that. My opponent just attacks for nothing and cannot deal any damage. So that's the end of the video. I hope you all had a wonderful time. Like and subscribe.